Assalaamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I just finished watching again, no, excuse me, listening to Magboeba Davids about the Hajj Journey. And she based her commentary on Farid Gabatini. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. So the book is called The Sun Rises from the West by Farid Gabatini. And she talks about how it inspired her intellect, and it's about the science and the revelations of the Qur'an based on logic, and the mathematical type of argumentation, and how although there is an emotional component to the deen, which is important, like let's not deny that, and the fact that there is an emotional part of the deen or the experience, obviously that shows, that reflects that there's some sort of shift or change that's energetic. So that is important. So there's no invalidating that, but the change really comes through. I'm paraphrasing the quote. It doesn't come through lamentation; it comes through consciousness. So she's talking about how in this book, Farid Gabatini is discussing the Hajj, and how it's basically like a series of argumentation, a series of arguments, you see. And so there's a kind of a mathematical aspect to it. And it's linked very much to the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he's, first of all, the argument with his father, then the argument he has with himself, regarding, it says he saw the sun, the moon, and the stars. And in other discussions we have, please excuse my hand, I've been gardening. In other discussions we have been talking about, for example, the Sumerian civilization pre-Babylon, where they were astronomically advanced, and there have been a lot of archaeological findings of like you'll actually see like the sun, the moon, and the stars in these archaeological findings. There's so many like tablets and statues that confirm that sequence. And Babylon, they were so well, I know that the Sumerians pre-Babylon were so astronomically advanced that they had the same star index in the 1700s. Excuse me, they had the same star index in their time than what our civilization had in the 1700s. So they were incredibly advanced in terms of mathematics and geometry and metallurgy, as well as, of course, astronomy. So those all connected, those all related. So hence the series of arguments. I mean, it is mathematical in terms of just like the basic logic. There's one creator, therefore there's creation. Or we understand and we can appreciate that there's one creator based on the fact that there's a unified creation with the heavens and the earth and everything working together as one, in oneness. So therefore you have like the very basic argumentation of Ibrahim alayhi salam with his father, then with himself when he's contemplating, and then with his people before he leaves, and then eventually the series of events leads him to building the kaaba, and so on and so forth. So now I've just published in Substacks. It's called Queen of the Well. So it's all about Hajjar, the story, like it's the bridge from Sarah to Hajjar, because we've discussed the season of Asya and the relationship of Asya with Musa alayhi salam, peace be upon her as well. And then we discussed the orbit of Maryam, Mary, mother of Jesus, peace be upon them both. And so now we're bridging from Bani Israel to the family and the people of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course we bridge from Sarah, one woman to another woman. We bridge from Sarah and Hajjar, may Allah be pleased with them. So I just finished that article, and for me as a revert, the reason why that story is significant, because I remember before I became a Muslim, I read the Bible, and I read it from beginning to end, making some notes and taking stock of certain things. But I remember very clearly getting to a point where I'm reading about Abraham and his wife Hajjar. So there's the situation where Sarah, but in my article Queen of the Well, I kind of looked at it on a deeper level, because I don't think it's fair to see Sarah as a as a petty person. Now there's the adhan. I'm going to pause. Okay, so I'm back. So I'm not going to go into the complexities of the situation between Sarah and Hajjar and Ibrahim alayhi salam. But bottom line is, when I was reading the Bible, especially the Old Testament, when I came across that part, I became quite curious as to what happened to his second wife and their child. So, the Bible tells you that story and then it just stops. So, and then it continues with the line of Bani Israel. So I was quite intrigued by that. And then when I finished the Bible, I made the intention of reading another scripture. But more specifically, I was more interested in the Qur'an because I was curious about that story. And it wasn't hard to, as ignorant as I was about Islam, it wasn't hard to connect the dots between Hajjar and her son and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Muslim community and that whole situation. It wasn't difficult to connect the dots, that there would have been some sort of validity purely based on that. So I became intrigued by just what happened and what is the link. And I made the niyyah to read another scripture. Now, to cut a long story very short, I was at my mother-in-law to be's house. I was engaged, and then I was at my mother-in-law's to be's house, and I felt like an energetic hand, not like a physical hand, an energetic hand, pull my right hand, and then I saw these two Qur'ans on the shelf. The one was the Abdullah Yusuf Ali, and the other one was from the King Fahd complex. Now, the Abdullah Yusuf Ali, that was printed in 1934. The King Fahd complex, that was also printed more or less the same time, because these two English translation Qur'ans were actually given to my then mother-in-law to be's parents. They were a German couple in a POW camp in Zimbabwe, and they were with some Turkish brothers. I think the one guy was a lawyer, the other guy was a doctor, but they gave them these English translation Qur'ans for the second purpose of doing dawah. And basically I started reading them. It was halfway through the King Fahd complex. I had a problem with the way they translated it. I think there was like quite a lot of political agenda kind of slotted in there, but instinctively, energetically, I felt that I had to make this decision. And I felt it was so instinctive that I actually physically felt it. I felt physically uncomfortable resisting Islam. So basically halfway through reading that English translation, I made the decision. I just basically surrendered. I gave up, said, okay, fine. Okay, God, if you want me to submit, if you want me to become Muslim, fine. And in my mind, I thought it was going to be boring. I thought it was going to be like a dull. I thought being a Muslim was going to be like being in a desert. I thought it was going to be a really dull experience. And I've obviously, if you study Islam, it's anything but dull. But it's not what I expected, because my decision was based on instinct. And so I was surprised by a lot of other things and developments. And I did my shahada. Like I asked for 2 years. I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the time, who I referred to as God. I said, please, can I have 2 years? So I spent 2 years researching, and I read all the books in the library. And I did my shahada, but that I'm going to leave for another talk, for another discussion. I have written an article somewhere on the internet, I can't remember where. I've written an article about it, and there is another interview, which is also on Radio 786, but I think I'm going to leave that for another time. The point I'm making is that, I wrote a poem which it goes something to the effect of, what can they do to my faith when I've seen the sea depart and the moon that is split? And furthermore, what can they do to my faith when I am the moon that split and the sea that parted? So that's in reference to the first time, because I also had a calling and inspiration to study the Qur'an. And I remember my first day at Dar Naim with Sister Fatwa Solomon. And her like inspirational khutbah in the beginning of the class, she said that, look, besides the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written your name on your seat, she said that, you know, for us Muslims, the Qur'an is the Red Sea that has departed. Like, it is this miracle that is in front of us that we get to not only witness, but we also get to experience that as well. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because, you know, when Magboeba and Sister Kadira, when they're talking about, you know, being in the right headspace to struggle and finally get there through all the adversity to eventually get to Hajj, to be the best version of the self, not just in terms of money or physically, but spiritually, to be fit for the argument, to go through like the series of events, to like get to Hajj and then go through the series of events of Hajj. You know, it's to be in the right place, not just externally, but to be in the right place internally as well. So that for me is so significant, because when I think of the Hujjaj, you know, obviously I haven't been on Hajj yet, but the way they're describing the Hujjaj, the way they're describing the experience, is that it sounds to me like when somebody has gone through it, that they in a sense become the sea that has parted and the moon that has split. And then what can people say about your faith? How can people undermine your iman and undermine your belief when you are the miracle that is being experienced? You're not just witnessing the miracles, you are the miracle, because you've gone through this shift and you've gone through this change. Alhamdulillah, subhanallah. So I think I'm going to leave it on that note. But shukran, Magboeba Davids and Qadira Muhammad, for your talk and for your insights. And we make dua that the people that are on Hajj at the moment are having the very best on all levels. And, you know, please comment below if you can think of better duas and expressions of gratitude and conviction. So I'm going to leave it at that, but shukran for listening. Assalaamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.